Hello, Seth.
Hello, Lilou.
I'm excited to be interviewing you because I've never interviewed you before. And after done this for 10, 15 years, it's very often the same people that we get to interview. Last week it was Greg Braden, and now it's you. I love it. Thank you so much for your freshness. Can we say that in English?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
I was highly recommended to interview you through a person that is famous around the world, and that she said that she's doing sessions with you and she loves it. And I'm really intrigued about your work, especially right now, and your advices. There is so much going on in the world. In a nutshell, what is for you the opportunity of what we're going through right now?
So, in many ways, what we're going through right now collectively is what I have gone through in my own life personally. So, being locked down is a lot like being in prison. I spent 3 years inside of a prison. It is, with the worry of getting sick, I spent years with physical illness, told that I was probably going to die as a result of the illness that I had. It's like, with this fear, with everybody being told what to do, being told to wear a mask, and just having all these rules and regulations and everything, people are starting to feel like, wow, this freedom that a lot of people in the industrialized world believed that they had, suddenly they don't feel so free anymore. So everything that's happening in the world collectively is are things that have happened to me in my own life personally, things that I went through in very extreme ways. And when I was going through some of these things, they were so extreme and they were so severe, and I was so afraid and I was so lost and just feeling like, oh my God, there is no way out of this. But in the midst of all this chaos and confusion and fear, I somehow was able to catch that I was thinking and feeling in these negative spiraling loops. And I realized that I was doing that. And I was like, wait a minute, okay, if I'm doing this, then I'm not being super present with my own existence. But then the mind comes in. I'm like, well, I'm in prison. Do I want to be present here? But all these things are coming up. But then I'm like, well, okay, am I actually in a prison, or is that a secondary expression? Where am I really? And it's like, well, where I really am is in my body, right? I'm perceiving through these human senses. And there is this energy that's causing my heart to beat, that's causing my lungs to breathe, that's causing all of these things to happen in my body faster than the speed of light. And it is an innate intelligence that is way more intelligent than I am. And so I'm realizing that I'm like, okay, what if I take the little bit of intelligence that I do have, that I'm spending mostly on being afraid of what's happening, and I start directing it into this innate intelligence of my body? I'm thinking about it, I'm like, why not, what else am I going to do? Why don't I start doing that and do that more often than focusing on the people fighting around me and yelling and bossing me around and all that stuff, because I don't need to even focus on that because it doesn't really matter that much. And I remember having this feeling of being like, wow, okay, this is what's really going on. And like all the things that are quote unquote wrong with my world, it was so overwhelming because I could count it. It was like I'm in prison, I'm detached from my family, I've lost everything. I like just everything seemingly was wrong with my life. And I had a moment where for a second I started laughing because it was absurd in that like everything was wrong. It seemed like I laughed for a second. I was like, wow, it's kind of like ridiculous because how could everything be wrong with my life? And when I had that moment, I started smiling for a second. And I was like, when I started smiling, I started feeling really good inside because I was like, wow, so much of this is just the way that I'm perceiving it. And I'm allowing myself to be afraid of all these external things that I don't actually really need to be focusing on. So I took full responsibility for how I was perceiving the world, how I was perceiving myself. And like I said, I realized that there's this energy that's in me that is going on regardless of what I'm thinking or feeling. And I was like, you know what? I'm in a perfect environment where I can start focusing on that energy and making a habit out of it. And I just did that every single day. And at first, I started doing it with my eyes closed, kind of like in a meditative state. I just shut my eyes. I would breathe rhythmically because it felt good when I did that. And I would smile inwardly. SMILE is a great acronym for Start My Internal Love Engine.
I love it.
But I would do that. I would smile, and because it made me feel good. And I was like, wow, I feel good when I do that. So I'm going to do that instead of not smiling. So I would breathe rhythmically and I would smile. And no matter what came up, meaning whatever thoughts or fears or problems or whatever, no matter what it was that came up, when I was in that calm, coherent space and I was breathing like that and I was in that, then I could see my problems for what they really were. They were literally just figments of my imagination that I had thought of and revisited so many times that, like Joe Dispenza says often, I had created the neural architecture in my brain and body that made it easy for me to keep thinking and feeling the way that I was most used to thinking and feeling. And I was like, man, okay, if I wired myself into this box, this perceptual box, where I was literally in a physical prison, then I must have been doing this long before I was physically incarcerated. So it took being put in an actual prison for me to realize that I had created a mental and emotional prison long before that. And so I'm doing this internal work and I'm committed. It is all that matters to me. And of course, I'm in a perfect environment where I could do that, right?
Now
But
it's becoming a perfect environment.
for everybody. And this is what this is about. Like, we're going to help people realize that they can do this no matter what. But so here I am, I'm in this place. I'm around people that I don't want to be around. People that they're the kind of people like you see them coming down the street, you cross the street to get away from them. It's like that. But I'm stuck right in there with these guys, living with them, sleeping next to them, like having to live with them. And I'm just doing this constantly. I'm shutting my eyes, putting in earplugs, and I'm getting into these states. And, I can hear them laughing at me and making fun of it and all the things that you would think that men in prison would try to do but it's just like being in high school or something, like the bullies, everybody doing all the stuff that they do. But I realized that this internal state was more important than anything happening around me. So the more I developed it, the more committed I became to continue to develop, and the less I cared
How was
about
it?
what.
How was it expanding? How quickly when you started doing that?
So in the beginning, I was a special case in that I was literally, when I got there, I was a mess. I was a hot mess, you could say. I was so worried. At that point, I had lost everything that I owned. I had been ripped away from my family. I had been, you could say, mistreated, treated like a dog, a bad dog, just kept in a kennel and yelled at. And I mean, it was awful how you get treated by going into that system. And so I'm abused, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm going through all the, I grew up in the woods living off the land. Like, I've never lived in an inner city environment where, I'm not a thug. I don't have that same mentality that a lot of people in that environment do, where they're just like, yeah, they take it and they're all tough. Like me, I'm just like, this is not what I'm used to feeling. So by the time I actually got to the prison after being dragged to the court system, I was thinking and feeling in such negative ways that, oh my God, I was lost. I felt like there was no hope to my life. And then knowing that I was going to be in this place for years, I got a 5-year sentence. And oh my God, it was like, I was so worried. I was so scared. I was so like, my life is over and ruined, that I couldn't think or feel anything other than thoughts and feelings related to that. But like I said, I had that epiphany. I had that moment where I was like, am I really in a prison? Or no, that's where my body and being is. But where my consciousness is inside of this body. And there is this innate intelligence, this higher power that is operating inside my body, that's causing my heart to beat, that's causing all these things to happen. And that's where I really am. That's the first place that I really am. And the prison is a secondary experience, you could say. So, but I'm spending all my time being afraid and being in this prison. And I was like, I could consciously choose to instead focus on being on this internal space. So when I realized that and I had that epiphany, I was like, who do I have to be and what do I have to do in order to move beyond this, the fears and everything that I'm feeling and get into a state of peace and calm. And so at this point, I just started having this intuitive idea like, okay, I'm going to write out everything that happened to me because I'm thinking all of these stories and all these ideas. And I'm like, if I write it out on paper, then I'm going to take all this stuff that's inside of me, I'm going to put it on paper. And I felt like maybe that it'll be cathartic. It'll help me to purge all the stuff that's in me, and it'll put it on paper and it'll get it out of me, and it'll be more of this like objective thing where I can look at it. So that's what I did. I wrote out everything that I could remember from the time I was born till that very moment so that I could look for self-limiting patterns or beliefs or ideas. And sure enough, right away, I could see them all. And I was like, oh my God. But the most valuable thing that happened is I got this stuff that was in me that I kept thinking about over and over, and I got it out of me and I put it on paper so it felt like it wasn't there anymore. So I started doing that, and then I realized that most of the things that I was thinking and feeling were just stories that I was telling myself that were in relation to the degree that I was afraid of them. So bit by bit, I started realizing this. It long way to answer your question, but it took me about a month of doing this every single day before I finally started like feeling good again. And it was amazing that it only took a month because I had spent months and years in a downward spiral that led me to that place. But I was so committed to loving my life, even though I was in a place I didn't want to be, that I just kept doing it and doing it. And I kept hitting these spots, you could say, like in my own awareness. Like I would feel parts of my body that were in pain, but I was like, no, this intelligence, this thing that's causing my heart to beat, I love that more than I love my problems or my pain. And I just kept doing that over and over. And I would notice how, say there was pain in my stomach or something, the pain eventually just started going away because my love of this energy that is God, that is the divine, that is the universe, that is whatever we want to call it, was greater than my addiction to the pain that I was feeling inside of me. And because my love was greater, I was creating a field of energy that was so powerful that the fear, the pain, the past didn't have a place to live in my body. And so that looks like this, like I'm breathing, I'm smiling, I'm loving my life. And I had every reason not to love my life. I'm being yelled at, I'm in a place I don't want to be. But I just started feeling so good in my body because I was choosing to feel good despite all of the external circumstances, that I got to a point where I was like, and everyone around me they're like, why are you so happy? And I was like, ooh. Then I started realizing, I'm like, okay, I've gotten to a point inside of me where I'm so aware of my heartbeat, of everything. My organs are my best friends at that point. Like, I'm feeling how they are in coherence to the beat of my heart. I'm feeling how my awareness is expanding in relation to the beat of my heart. And I'm like, okay, I feel incredible. This is amazing. Like, my health issues were gone, like everything cleared up. But I'm around all these people that are suffering, and they're stuck in a state of being, a state of mind, a state of perception where they believe that they are stuck in a prison, being abused by prison guards. Like, they believe all this stuff so much that they're in a state of pain and suffering. And so I was like, okay, what what do I have to do and who do I have to be to take this internal state that I'm feeling to higher and higher levels? And I was like, well, I would have to embrace this place that I'm in. I would have to actually love the prison and all the people in it. And at first I was thinking about that. I was like, that's crazy. Like, this place is awful. I can't do that. But then I was realizing, I'm like, well, if I'm really in love with my own life and my own body and my own awareness of self and reality, then I'm kind of obligated to extend that love, that state of awareness out into the world around me. And so at first I'm thinking about it, I'm like, is this even possible? The mind goes through all these like hurdles and loops and things. But I was like, of course it's possible. Like, if I can do this inside and because I got to a point where I didn't even care that I was there. It didn't even matter. I was like, I felt so good that it didn't even matter that I was there because I knew that I had done something inside of myself.
Oops.
That's it.
Thank you.
But I knew that I did something inside of myself that was so profound, but I did it. Okay. I chose to do it.
Yes.
Now, this energy, which is in all of us, is there no matter what. It's in all of us. But I made a choice to make focusing on it more important than the external environment around me. Because I had done it enough over and over and over, I created a new state of being where I was able to rise above my fears and the perception that, I'm stuck, that
Yeah.
I'm this person, that I'm in time. I was living as this divine force, you could say, integrated into my human perception. So anyway, I'm in there realizing that all of these men around me are stuck. They're suffering. So bit by bit, I was like, I just started embracing them. I started embracing the prison itself, the prison guards. I just kept feeling like, okay, they aren't separate from who and what I actually am. They are a part of me. And bit by bit, I began to just love them and accept them as they were. And I kept doing this no matter what, instead of being triggered, right? Because I could shut my eyes and be in this state, no problem. But then I'd open my eyes and I'd come out and I'd be like, whoa, okay, a sober dose of reality. Like, I'm still in prison. But I was like, if I'm doing this with my eyes open, I can do it. I mean, if I'm doing it with my eyes closed, I should be able to do it with my eyes open. And so I would keep my eyes open. And I was like, wow, I'm staying in these states with my eyes open. And I'm making this internal state more of a priority than even the way I'm perceiving the world around me. And so I'm taking this energy and I'm emanating it out into the world. And so normally the things that would trigger me, like the bullies or the prison guards who are yelling at us and not like, I was like, I'm not going to allow that to take me out of this space. I am connected to this miraculous divine force that is gifting me the opportunity to perceive reality through these human senses. Why would I let anybody or anything take me out of that? And I was like, well, the only way that they could is if I allowed them to take me out of it. But I was like, I am more connected to the essence of what I am. And at that point, like when I say connected, like not only am I feeling my connection to all of my body, the coherence and what it feels like, but I'm feeling the connection to this planet that we're on. I'm feeling that this planet is connected to this solar system, and that this solar system is connected to this galaxy, and the galaxy is connected to the universe. And I'm feeling what it's like to have all of this massive connection supporting me and being present in my field of awareness. And the feeling of that, okay, and especially to become conscious that you're feeling that. I'm silently crying tears of joy because I realize like this is reality. This is what's actually going on. And I'm returning to almost like, and I'm smiling all the time because I'm kind of like returning to this state of being like a little kid where there's awe and wonder and joy before we got abused or traumatized or whatever it is that happened to most of us. So I'm back in these states of like, oh my God, anything is possible. And this is a playground and I'm here to play. So I'm choosing to remain in these states in the face of all the things that could take me out of it if I allowed them. So when people would yell, when people would do these things and it would normally disrupt me and take me out of it, I was like, no, I'm going to stay in a state of internal alignment, of coherence, of being so at peace with this energy that is allowing me to exist and perceive reality through my human senses, that I was doing it in the face of everybody and everything. And at first, people are like trying to figure out like, what's he so happy for? Like, why are you smiling? Like, but I'm like, they don't, it's okay. They just don't know. And I forgive them because what I'm feeling inside is so beautiful. It's so great that if they were to start feeling this, it would change them too. And so I was that committed to it. At this point, it was common sense. I'm like, okay, I can be in these states that I've trained myself to be in, or I could be in a state of panic and fear and aggression and anger and blaming the government for putting me here and blaming other people for making my life the way it is. But no way, I would never do that because that would mean that I'm not taking responsibility for my life and that I'm placing the blame on somebody or something outside of me.
What was the
And
biggest illusion you had to go over to get there?
what's the biggest illusion you're saying?
Yeah.
The perception that I'm separate from everything around me. And when we're in a fear-based state, of course, we're going to think we're separate from everybody and everything because all we can focus on is our body is producing stress hormones and we're stressed out and we create thoughts and feelings that are in alignment with our body's ability to produce these stress hormones. But what people don't realize is the opposite is true. If you can create habits that are in alignment with the thoughts and feelings that are created as a result of your body producing stress hormones, when you choose to calm down and you get into this state of calm and relaxation, your body will then actually start producing feel-good chemicals. And so you start creating thoughts and feelings that are the result of your body producing these feel-good chemicals. And you get really good at it. And your body gets really good at it. And suddenly you're thinking and feeling, it's very much like being in a state, like I said, like of being a little kid, where you're just like, your imagination is running wild and anything is possible in the world. And, as little kids, most of us were never told how beautiful we were. And that anything is possible in the world and that we can create anything we want. Some of us were, but as a species, most of us were never told that. Then we get traumatized, we get abused, we get whatever happens, and we go into this state of fear or fight or flight. And we keep, because that's so impactful, whatever it was, our self esteem gets hurt, our self confidence gets hurt, but we keep, the experience was so impactful that we keep creating situations where we're reliving the intensity that caused that initial stress impact. And so our life going forward, whether we are conscious of it or not, we are thinking and feeling in response to the stress that occurred, and we keep reliving the same situations that are look different. It might be different people in different situations, but it's essentially the same energy, the same feeling of stress that we are tapping into and creating our life experience from.
So
And
what
we
would you
don't even
say?
realize.
Yeah. So what would you say are we all have similar soul mission or soul? Why are we here on Earth then? Is it really to let go of all this and go back to a state of pure love and be always in that state?
Okay, so here's where it's going to be slightly different for everybody, but essentially, okay, and there's a million different answers for this. Why did we incarnate? This is a whole other conversation that we could go into that will have different meanings and a different context for every soul that incarnated. Okay, some people have had horrendous things happen to them and they've done horrendous things, and so their incarnation is a way of working this stuff out. But most of us, okay, you could say this, none of that matters, you could say, okay? For most of us, we are here, we have a choice to live in harmony with this energy that is in all of us, because this energy that's causing my heart to beat is essentially the same energy that's causing your heart to beat. It's everybody. It's causing everybody. It's gifting us all the opportunity to exist here. So we can choose to live a life that aligns our conscious perception with that energy or not. We can choose to live as fear-based, upset, stressed out, angry, whatever. Everybody's going to choose their own flavor, you could say. But if we choose to live in a state of trust, and it isn't just about love and all that, it's choosing to become aware of your essential nature. Like, just because we all have the same energy that's causing our body to exist and our heart to beat, we all have a different signature of that energy. And when we choose to align our conscious awareness of self with that energy, yes, we start to experience ourselves as connected to all these things that I'm talking about, but we're going to have our own unique flavor of it, you could say, our own unique electromagnetic signature. And that is beautiful because that's what gives us our own unique authenticity. So we become tuned into the same energy that's going on, but we have our own unique way of perceiving it and expressing it. And that is the gift that each and every one of us have. So the point, you choose if you're going to do that. And if you're going to do that, then you're going to start incorporating this greater energy that is connected, the unified field, quantum science calls it, or the God, or whatever, like religion calls it, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. It's not anything that we can really name. But there is an invisible field of energy. There is this thing that is all of us. It's causing all of this to be. And the more we choose to be in alignment with it, the more we're able to integrate the potential of it into our human awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more of like the purpose of it, because the
But most of the
more
time we're on off. Like sometimes, we feel it, we're there, and then an incident happens, and then all of a sudden it crashes, and we're back at the ground. You know how it goes. So, is there a tip to, instead of slipping like that so much, just getting right back to this, could we say 0 point?
Yeah, absolutely, you could say that. So, like I was saying, all these things, like I could do it with my eyes closed and be in that state. But then when I'd open my eyes and I'd see where I think I am, I would come out of it. And so I was like, ooh, okay. As a result of doing this work, you get better and better at actually
Sure.
doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the difference between me and somebody who might be struggling with staying in this flow, you could say, is I was so committed that there was nothing more important than being in this space.
Mm.
Nothing. And I had made my mind up of that. Now, I was in the perfect environment for that. Essentially, I was like in a monastery. I was in a place where, I decided, I was like, nothing in this environment around me is worth distracting me or taking me out of this place. I had made my mind up about that. And I was like, whatever this energy is in me, okay, again, I had to convince myself of a few things here. Like, this energy that is inside my body is way more intelligent than I am. Okay, like what it's causing to have happen in my body is, I like when I think about it, I'm like, okay, mind blown. Like I can't even think about it. It's beyond that. So I knew that inside of me is something so miraculous. There's this miracle of life. And for me not to devote my consciousness to it is like me saying, yeah, that doesn't matter. This isn't, so what? There's this miracle of life inside of my body. I'd much rather be distracted by all these things around me that are creating stress in my body. Like that's what we're up against. That's what many people are facing. And I know it sounds kind of insulting, but people need to ask themselves, do you realize that something's causing your heart to beat? And then if you do realize it, how committed are you to forming a relationship with it? Because here's the thing, we, without realizing it, have been so conditioned to think that external things are more valuable than these internal states of being.
Including a God that is outside of us.
All of it. We do that with everything. We think that cars and money and relationships and houses and God and all these things that we think are outside of us are more valuable than our ability to get into and remain in a fully connected state. So that's the first thing. It's a reprioritization of values. Okay, and it's easy to look at all this stuff and rationalize it in a way that makes sense. First of all, we know like the wealthiest people in the world, many of them will admit, like, okay, yeah, money's nice, but they're not truly happy. And most people know, like, okay, you get that new car or you get in that relationship, you feel great or happy or whatever for a little while, but then it goes away and you want more. So these external things, as pleasing as they can be in the moment, they don't last. And this is easy to look at from the ultimate big picture in that we're born into these bodies, we live, and then we die, and none of this stuff matters anyway. Can't take any of it with you. But whatever this energy is that is allowing us to live in human form, that's probably still going to be there. So here's thing that I can tell you from going through my own near death experiences, both through car accidents, drug induced overdoses, scary things that I've lived through and made it through. But in my own experience, what I've noticed is as the human consciousness is leaving the body, you could say, as who we think we are, the person that we believe ourselves to be, starts to dissipate like smoke into the air, and we start to become part of what it is that we actually are and where we come from. We have these moments in between worlds where our whole life flashes before our eye and we see everything that we did and we're like, oh my God, like there was this force that was there the whole time that was always trying to get my attention through all of these different experiences, yet I never chose to focus on it. I was focusing on everything but that. And we become conscious of this and we realize it. And at that point, it's usually too late. Then we go and we die, and it's, that hence reincarnation and all that stuff. It doesn't matter what anybody believes or not either in regard to this. There is a very objective process, an involuntary process that happens. And it might look different for everyone, but essentially the point of it is that what are we focused on while we're here? Because if we're here trying to focus on the acquirement of money and value and relationships and all these things, in the end, we don't take any of that with us. So then it's like, what do we really value? And for me, it was like, I value this connection that I have with my own being, with whatever this energy is, because that is what this is truly all about. That's what was going on before I was born. It's what's going to be going on after I leave. And it is certainly what is going on now. But everybody, for the most part, is focused on everything but that. And we think that's normal. We think being in a disconnected, stressed out state of being is normal. And look at now we're in a situation where the whole world is feeling very similar to how I probably was feeling when I first got to prison. They're afraid. They're feeling like, wow, how free am I? They're worried about getting sick, or they are sick, or they're addicted to stuff because they don't know how to deal with their own fear in response to it. So right now, we are collectively going through something that is very similar to what I went through personally. And we, as a species, have the possibility to ask ourselves, are we going to lay down and be afraid of everything that looks like it's happening? Or instead, are we going to choose to take responsibility for ourselves? Are we going to take responsibility for how we're perceiving this situation? And instead of looking at this as something bad that's happening to us, maybe we can look at it as something beautiful and powerful that's happening for us. And if we can start looking at it like that, then we start looking at the hard things that happen to our life. I call them initiations because they just are. They're these really difficult things, we could say, that happen for us, right? Most people believe they happen to us, but it's actually happening for us, because if we can become conscious enough of this process of why it's happening, then we can realize that it's actually helping us to evolve and grow as this soul that we truly are. But it's up to us to take responsibility for how we're perceiving it. So that's a choice, right? I'm like, okay, the government wants to take away all my freedom and they're telling me I have to stay in my house. I feel like I'm in prison. This sucks. I hate it. Oh, I'm stressed out and on. Or we can say, you know what? This is providing me with this beautiful opportunity to get to know myself better, to practice the things that I wasn't practicing before because I was so busy running around and doing a million things and trying to make ends meet. And here's something else too, a lot of people don't realize. Like, okay, great, you've reached a state of peace or enlightenment or whatever. They're like, okay, yeah, I could do that, but who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to do this? We have all these fears and things that come up. And I can tell you, and I never knew this stuff was possible until I really started getting into these states and sustaining them. Because I made a priority of being in a state of coherence within my being, around my being, all of it, I prioritized that. I was more devoted to that than anything. I literally said, I was like, I don't care where the money comes from. I don't care how my bills are going to get paid. I don't care if they don't. If I need to be out on the street homeless, If that's what the universe wants from me, whatever it wants me to do, I'm going to do. But I am not going to stop focusing on being in harmony with this energy.
That's a big
That
commitment.
and not everybody has to do that, but I'm making a point, okay? I made that commitment and I was willing to let go of everything in the face of being fully connected to that. And interestingly enough, things would happen around me. Money would come out of nowhere. Things would come, like people would come with opportunities and things that I knew were in alignment with this. And I could see, like, oh my God, it wants me to be comfortable. It wants me to have things. It wants me to function in this world, but it wants me to have a relationship with it above and beyond all those other things. Whereas most of us, we spend the bulk of our time focusing on wanting or needing or having these things than we do to this relationship with our inner self, right? And but I know, so all this abundance, all these things just start happening. And I'm like, oh my God, like, thank you. It's so beautiful, but I know better than to get caught up in thinking that it's about the things that are coming to me. It's about me sustaining this internal state, and it supports, literally, like, this internal state will support the circumstances of my life. Okay, like, think of it like this, like this energy that is causing our heart to beat, that's causing all of these anatomical and physiological reactions to take place in our body faster than the speed of light, is the same energy that causes galaxies to exist, that causes universes to exist.
Yeah.
And if it can manage all of that, then it certainly can help us manage the details of living life in a way that is making it a priority, but still also addressing the things that we feel like we need to. It's just a reprioritization of values, essentially. We're choosing to value our internal state of wholeness and wellness more than cars and relationships and other things externally, which is the opposite of what the world, quote unquote, teaches us. So now the world is in a situation where we can all start doing this if we choose.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. It's going to feel like, is this possible? Is it? But it is by going through the parts of yourself that doubt it, that aren't sure of it, that enable you to have a greater connection to it as long as you stay committed to working through it. And there's a lot of people now, like me, I would assume like you, there's a lot of people who are realizing, like, okay, something way more important than this Western industrialized way of being is going on. There's a big piece of the puzzle that most of us are not perceptively aware of that is causing us as a species to live in a state of disharmony with our environment. Our way of life is polluting this world. It's causing havoc and chaos. We don't know how to interact with other people because we don't know how to even interact with our own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty obvious when you look at it from a common sense state of being. We are not in harmony with nature because we are not in harmony with our own inner nature. But once we start creating that coherence through heart-brain coherence, by smiling, by loving our life, by being like a kid and realizing that awe and wonder are alive and well, and we can start imagining what we want this world to look like. We can imagine how we want our relationship with our body and with other people to look like, and prioritize these states of being until they start to become a reality in our life. Then we're going to start naturally generating solutions for how to live in this world sustainably, in harmony with our body, each other, and the natural rhythms of the planet. and this stuff just becomes normal. So
That was the longest answer I've never had to a question, but I love it because you you brought us to this state. I love it, but that's the longest one. You're so cool. But we get it. Thank you for bringing us to this place where we can see that, and yeah, want to experience that and dedicate and commit, as you said, and but I also I hear it's a commitment and also a let go, because then you flow in a very natural way in life, and then you're just guided as to where to go, what to do, and etc. So is this what you call divine masculine and divine feminine? Is that pretty much living in what you describe here? Is that what a lot of people are seeking, what a lot of people are talking about? Oh, the divine feminine is being activated and masculine and this, but I have a feeling that it's more of an experience rather than just, a description.
that is an amazing question. So a lot of people are gonna yes, a lot of people would be like, this is the union, the divine union of divine masculine and feminine coming together and expressing itself as a whole, and it's happening individually, it's happening collectively. But the more connected you become, the less you let go of even ideas like that.
Yeah.
Because so much of what we think, like English is my first language, I don't is French or
French,
English,
yeah.
whatever. Everybody is taught a language that isn't really theirs to begin with. So the way that we process, perceive, and express information and things that we learn in many ways wasn't ever really ours to begin with. So it's not that there's anything bad or wrong with it. It's just like, let's look at this stuff for what it is, because the more connected you become to this field of energy that you actually are, the more your ability to perceive information beyond the way we're most used to perceiving it increase. You start perceiving things beyond the five senses. You perceive things in a multi-dimensional way that you could have never imagined before. So things like language and ideas and philosophies like divine feminine or masculine or even God, or you start being like, okay, am I going to process information and think of it in the way that I'm most accustomed to perceiving it? Or am I going to break through the barriers of even that? Because we get attached to a lot of these perceptions and a lot of this conditioning and a lot of the way that we're most used to perceiving things. And a lot of people can get stuck in their perception of those things, when the whole idea behind all of this is to get unstuck, to get aligned with reality as it truly is, and then live from that place and express and perceive and communicate from that place. And it's very different. It's new. We're coming into it. We're testing the waters of it, but it's happening. That's why all of these people are experiencing all these gifts, telepathy, audio, clairsentience, clair audio, like all these things are starting to happen, and we're all like realizing it. We're like, whoa, we're communicating in ways that we never thought possible. So that's kind of a long answer.
Yeah, no, we're getting ideas from. So where are ideas coming from then?
It's almost like this energy that we are is forever. It's connected to infinity. So the more we become aware of it, the more our own human cognition becomes supercharged, you could say, or fueled with the feelings and the energy of what infinity actually is. But because it's coming through our own unique human physiology and our own unique human perception, we are like a fingerprint. We have our own unique interpretation and expression of that infinite source of energy. And so it's coming from infinity, but the way we perceive it and express it is uniquely our own. And so we have the ability to, you could say, co-create new possibilities in alignment with this energy. So even though you and I might be feeling and perceiving the exact same energy, you're going to express it differently than me, but it's going to be compatible and it's going to be in alignment. And we're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're doing it too. And like, if like think of little kids like playing. They're so innocent. They're just so like in love with
Yeah,
life
because
and
the
they're
ego and the competitive sides are not there anymore. So there is no point at being jealous or being in fear of losing something or somebody else taking that idea from you or whatever.
it's the opposite. It's the exact we're like we want to see each other succeed. We want to see the best in each other. Like because if we didn't, then we're still living in separation or our own perception of separation. And the more connected you become, the more you want everybody to become connected because that's real success. That's real value. That's what's really important. Not chaos, disorder, competition, like all the things that we think are normal are not normal. They are temporary glitches that lead us away from what's actually normal.
So let's take a situation that we might all face in some time, like vaccine. Just, I know this is a big topic. Let's not get into the politics and all that and the finances that it involves or whatever, but how to react. More into what happens concrètement, in French we say, like in a practical way, when people are going to say, hey, you want to travel, you need to be vaccinated. Hey, you want your daughter in the school, she needs to be vaccinated. And this is the way to do it. Authority starts to press. What's your advice?
So here's the thing, Kate. For everybody listening to this, it's funny when you talk about a topic like vaccines, it's such a political hot seat button. Like as soon as you mention the word, people automatically go right into their fear-based perception of whatever that hot button topic is. So for the sake of all the listeners right now, for one moment, I'm asking you not to do that. Be open-minded, be open-hearted, and let's look at this from expansive perspective so that we can start to narrow in on better possibilities that work for everybody. So vaccines, right? It's divided into two camps. Those who think we should have it and those who think we shouldn't. But the more objective we are about it, let's look at it like, okay, apparently vaccines have helped a lot of people. So there is a good aspect of it. But the real problem with vaccines seems like who's making them? What is the transparency of them putting stuff in it that doesn't need to be there? It's more of a like, okay, if a vaccine is actually going to work, let's have more transparency around how they're produced, what's in them, who needs them. Doesn't that make more sense? If people are forcing anything on us, like, first of all, it hasn't happened yet. Everybody's talking like, oh, mandatory vaccines. But so many people are afraid of that and they're projecting that fear out into the world that in many ways we could be creating that. First of all, it hasn't happened yet. So why get into this fear-based state of like, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Instead, we should be, or not should, instead, another way of looking at this is like, let's have more transparency around vaccines, how they're produced, who needs them. If enough people can get together and agree that, okay, these big drug companies that are producing them need to have more disclosure, they should have more transparency. And because we, the people, agree that that should be the case, we can come together and we have so much more power than anybody has ever given us permission to realize that it's up to us to begin to realize that now and take responsibility for that. And the solutions for every problem that we could ever have already exist, but we're not going to see them if we're in a fear-based, stressed out state. So, does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah. And I feel that you have another piece of the answer, which is in what solutions or how to be about it on a behavior level or on a feeling level or connecting with this energy and flowing or doing whatever feels right at that time, and that also patience, and things change and people evolve, and there is other pieces that will come later on, and there is no urgency. I feel like from this space of, connectiveness inside, there is not anymore this impatience or this have to do it right now, or things can change. So I don't know if you.
You nailed it. That's exactly it. Because as a culture, as a Western industrialized culture, we have been conditioned to want it now. Everybody wants to get rich quick. We want things to happen now. Me personally, especially spending time in prison, I've had a lot of opportunity to develop patience. And we have to be objective and realize that the world didn't just get to be the way it is overnight. Like, this has been building up for longer than we've been alive. Okay, so for us to get all worked up and stressed out about it, we're only hurting ourselves. So choosing to relax, choosing to slow down, and take responsibility for how we're perceiving the situation is going to empower us to be able to confront and deal with anything that comes up. Because here's something I didn't say before, that I was doing this work when I was in this prison, and I was around all of these predatory men, you could say. But I got to a state where I was so in harmony with everything that I'm giving voice to, that my electromagnetic field was just emitting only this, because it was all I was aware of. There was nothing else there. And everybody around me would be like, what is this? What is happening? Like, they're like, I feel something amazing. And they're like, what is it? And they would ask me, they had no idea. And, I was like, whoa, like, it's what I'm doing internally is affecting people around me. And, of course, I know it because I know it's not me. It's not me that's doing it. It's this energy, this divine, you could say, that is actually doing it. So I would just say to them, like, they're like, are you doing this? They're like, what is this? And I'm like, it's what you're feeling is the part of you that is in resonance with the part of me that's doing this, because ultimately there is no separation. So when we as individuals make these internal states a priority, we embody them so that we're literally putting this out to the world. The world reacts very differently. And the things that we fear the most, you would be amazed at how quickly being in these states of being disarms the things that normally we're afraid of. So, like, we're afraid of the government, we're afraid of the police, we're afraid of all these things. But that's perceiving things from duality, from separation. But when we're in these coherent states, those things actually, in many ways, like a lot of those people that are enforcing these mandates and these laws, they want love too. They might not know it, they might not be acting like it, but it's our job to hold a frequency that is above and beyond the fear-based free, because they're in a state of fear also. They're just doing what they think is right. They don't know better. But when you are in a state of internal coherence that is supported by this universal coherence, you are emitting an electromagnetic signature and frequency that is so much greater than these fear-based states that most people are embodying. And when one individual is in this state and sustaining this state, they are going to have such a profound effect on somebody who isn't in that state, because coherence entrains incoherence. So somebody who's in a chaotic, scared, freaked out state suddenly comes around somebody who's very calm, very balanced. This person's feeling their connection to the divine, and they're in that state and they're emitting it. Suddenly that person's going to start calming down. They're going to start feeling a lot better. And this is what I do with the people that I work with. Like, I get into these states of being, I get them into it, And then they feel so relaxed. They start talking about all their problems and everything. But we're processing their problems from this expansive, zoomed out state. And they're able to see most of the time that their problems aren't such big problems. And when they can see that themselves from this greater perspective, then they're able to move beyond it easier. I personally have full faith and confidence in us as individuals to be able to do this, to support one another in doing it, and then coming up to these forces that everybody's so afraid of and choosing to be in these states above and beyond coming out of these states and buying into all of this fear and tyranny and oppression that is being pushed out into the world. There is no us and them. We are them. They are us. We are empowering this thing, this tyranny and this oppression to be what it is by being afraid of it.
Yes.
This is what, yeah, like.
Exactly. That's a great word to end this conversation, though. It's, of course, it would be great to continue it, and there's much to say. And thank you so much for these words of wisdom and the experience. I felt it was an experience. It was different than any other interview I've done. I love it. I thank you for that. It was very refreshing. I felt it was going to be, and I'm sure it will bring a lot of wanting to experience this for ourselves after watching it. So thank you so much. You have sessions, one-on-one sessions. You also wrote a book. How do you say, to survive? What is it? The
Fight to Enlighten.
Fight to Enlighten. Yeah, that's quite something. Which year did it come out?
Like right after the whole COVID situation happened.
Well, so it's really recent. Okay, I didn't know how recent it was.
And you know what I did just for that book too? Like, remember I told you, like, when I was in prison, I wrote out all my life experiences, and I never ever planned a book. It's because it's filled with the most deeply personal things that I would never want anybody to know. But because I have worked through all of this stuff so deeply, I was like, you know what? I can put this out in the world as showing how vulnerable a human can be for the sake of healing. And so I wrote the book. It's interesting. It was like written, even though it's about my life, it's written in an objective tone. It's written so that it's about you, the reader. It's about us as a species. And the stories of my life just kind of serve as metaphors for what is actually possible.
Yeah.
So it's a total triumph of the human spirit. And yeah, I put it out. I was going to put it out right before the COVID situation happened. And then that happened. And I was like, oh my God, this book is more relevant now than ever before, because essentially the same thing that's happening to us as a species.
Yes, hence this interview. Okay, great. My God, I love the timing of it. Thank you so much. I look forward meeting you maybe one day over here in France or in the United States. Where do you live? Where are you based?
I live in Maine, on the east coast of the United States.
Beautiful. Wow, must be lovely at this time of the year.
Beautiful. I'm deep in the woods. Like
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for the energy that you give us today in this beautiful video. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.